The first call came in just after nightfall, and nothing about it sounded ordinary. The voice on the line was tense, but controlled, as if the fear had not fully surfaced yet. Kalin said there were people inside his apartment arguing loudly. He said he heard what sounded like gunshots. Not one. More than one. In a quiet American town where nights were usually predictable, this kind of call immediately set alarms in motion. Police were dispatched without delay, expecting to find something serious waiting for them. But when officers arrived, the scene made no sense. The apartment was crowded, but not dangerous. A young couple was celebrating an engagement. Friends filled the rooms. Music was playing, laughter echoed through the hallway. No weapons were found, no signs of violence. Someone admitted that a firecracker may have been set off during the celebration. What Kalin believed were gunshots were dismissed as noise, mistaken in the moment. The officers cleared the scene and left, believing it was nothing more than a misunderstanding. Kalin was born in January of 1984 in a small city in Utah, a place where people knew each other and routines early changed. He was quiet, thoughtful, and close to his family, especially his older brother. In 2002, he enrolled in Utah State University, and 4 years later graduated with a degree in social welfare. On paper, his future looked stable. In reality, it slowly began to fall apart. In 2009, his brother was sentenced to prison after a drug-related incident ended in the death of a family member. The case shattered the family and left a deep mark on Kalin. After that, his career never found steady ground. Job applications went unanswered. Interviews led nowhere. By 2014, he was working briefly at a school but quit after only a few months. His father believed the stress was taking a toll on him. His mother disagreed. She spoke to him often. She said he sounded normal, motivated, even hopeful. He had adopted a small dog and spent most of his free time caring for it. Nothing about him suggested someone losing touch with reality. That is why what happened next was so unsettling. Later that same night, around 10:30, Kalin called 911 again. This time the call ended almost immediately. The dispatcher tried calling back. When Kalin answered, his voice was different, confused, disoriented. He struggled to explain where he was. He could not clearly give his address. At one point he mentioned that his roommate kept telling him he was imagining things, that he was confused. The call left the dispatcher uneasy. Kalin was 30 years old, physically healthy, with no known history of mental illness. He did not sound drunk. He did not sound high. He sounded lost. Then the line went quiet. The next morning, just after 8, the third call came in. This one would later become the most disturbing piece of evidence in the entire case. When the dispatcher asked for his location, Kalin did not answer with an address. He asked a question instead. Over and over again in a flat, almost mechanical voice. "Where am I?" He repeated it again and again, as if stuck in a loop. The words did not change. The tone did not change. It sounded less like fear and more like someone searching for reality itself. Police were sent once more to his apartment. The door was locked. Nothing was broken. No signs of forced entry. His roommate said nothing unusual had happened. No intruders. No noise, no danger. Officers checked the apartment, confirmed everyone was safe, and left. Later that day, Kayleen called his mother. He told her he felt like someone was trying to get inside. He said no one believed him, not his roommate, not the police. He sounded disappointed, but calm. He told her he planned to clean his room and continue applying for jobs. She tried to reassure him. She did not know this would be the last time she would ever hear his voice. 3 days passed. Kayleen did not come home. His phone went unanswered. His roommate contacted his parents. When his father entered the apartment, everything that mattered was still there. His phone, his wallet, his identification, his dog. But Kayleen was gone, and whatever happened after that night would leave more questions than answers for years to come. The cameras did not show violence, but they showed something far more unsettling. After Kayleen was reported missing, police began pulling security footage from the area around his apartment. The recordings were dated September 27th, the same day as the third 911 call. It had been raining lightly all afternoon, the kind of steady, quiet rain that makes everything feel slower. At 3:30 in the afternoon, Kayleen appeared on camera. He was barefoot, no shoes, no jacket. He walked toward a large boulder near the edge of the parking lot and disappeared behind it. There was nothing unusual about the rock itself, except for its size. It stood just tall enough to block the view of what was behind it. Minutes later, another camera angle showed a car pulling up near the same boulder. Almost immediately, Kayleen ran out from behind the rock and moved away from the vehicle. Some believed he was running from someone. Others argued he was simply startled. There was no proof either way. 2 hours later, at 5:45, he appeared again. This time he was not alone. He was with his dog. The small animal trotted beside him as Kayleen stood near the same boulder talking softly. From the footage, it looked like he was speaking to the dog, which on its own was not strange. Anyone who loved their pet would understand that moment. But investigators later suggested something else. They believed Kayleen may have been speaking to someone who was not there. The next clips deepened the mystery. Another vehicle stopped near the boulder. Kayleen turned his head and stared behind the rock. He did not wave. He did not approach. He simply watched. No one else could be seen on camera. The footage offered no explanation, only fragments of behavior without context. The final video was recorded just before 7 that evening. It showed Kayleen's roommate walking toward the boulder, wearing yellow rain boots. Kayleen was not visible. He never appeared on camera again after that moment. Police focused heavily on the rock. Behind it was a narrow area leading toward a small creek that ran past the apartment complex. On normal days, the water was shallow, barely noticeable. But that weekend, the region had been hit by heavy rainfall. Water levels were higher than usual. The ground was slick, unstable, and uneven. Investigators theorized that Kayleen may have wandered toward the creek in a confused state, slipped and fallen in. They believed the current could have carried him away. It was an explanation that required no crime, no second person, no conspiracy. Just an accident. His family did not accept it. They argued that Kayleen was familiar with the area, that he had lived there long enough to know the terrain. They questioned why he would walk barefoot in the rain, why none of the cameras captured a fall, why there were no signs of struggle or injury in the footage, and most importantly, why the police seemed so ready to close the case without answers. Searches continued. Volunteers walked the creek banks. Flyers were posted. Dogs were brought in. Weeks passed with nothing. Kayleen had vanished as completely as if the ground had opened beneath him. Then, nearly 10 weeks later, a call came in from a plumber working near a river miles away. What they found would only deepen the mystery. 10 weeks after Kayleen disappeared, most people had begun to prepare for the worst. But no one was prepared for where he was found. In early December, a plumber was sent to inspect a blocked drainage system near a river several miles away from Kayleen's apartment. Heavy rains had caused repeated flooding, and debris kept clogging the pipes. While working near the water, he noticed something lodged against the bank. At first he thought it was trash. Then he realized it was a body. It was Kayleen. The location stunned everyone. The place where his body was found was more than 6 miles from the apartment complex. To reach it naturally, the water would have had to carry him through multiple bends, shallow areas, rocky stretches, and uneven slopes. It was not a straight path. It was not an easy path. An autopsy was ordered immediately. The results only raised more questions. There were no obvious signs of trauma, no broken bones, no defensive wounds. His body showed no clear evidence of a struggle. Toxicology tests came back clean. No alcohol, no drugs, nothing that would explain confusion or impaired judgment. Then came the most troubling detail. There was no water in his lungs. In typical drowning cases, water is present in the respiratory system. It is one of the key indicators used by forensic pathologists. In Kayleen's case, it was absent. The medical examiner could not conclusively say how long he had been in the water, or even whether he had drowned at all. The official cause of death was listed as undetermined. Police stood by their theory. Based on the 911 calls and the surveillance footage, they believed Kayleen had experienced a sudden psychological episode. They suggested he wandered near the creek, slipped, fell in, and was carried downstream by unusually strong currents caused by heavy rainfall. From their perspective, it was tragic, but accidental. His family refused to accept that explanation. They pointed to the distance. They pointed to the lack of injuries. They pointed to the absence of water in his lungs. They asked how a body could travel that far through rough terrain without visible damage. They asked why no one saw him enter the water. They asked why a healthy 30-year-old man with plans for the future would simply walk barefoot into danger. Most of all, they asked why someone who sounded afraid on the phone would be dismissed so easily. To them, the case was never an accident. They believed someone else was involved. That Kalen's fear was real. That something happened near that rock where the cameras could not see. A place that blocked the truth just enough to leave only fragments behind. Over time, the case faded from headlines, but not from memory. Online communities began dissecting the footage, frame by frame. The 911 calls were replayed again and again. People debated whether his voice sounded frightened or detached, whether he was running from something or toward it, whether the truth lay in psychology or in human involvement. No arrests were ever made. No charges were filed. Officially, the case remains closed. Unofficially, it remains unresolved. Kalen's family continues to speak his name. They continue to push for answers. They believe his story is not finished. That the silence surrounding his death hides something important. And perhaps the most unsettling part of all is this. The last clear words Kalen ever spoke were not a cry for help or a description of danger. They were a question. Where am I? And even now, years later, no one can say for certain where he truly was or what happened to him after that quiet night when reality seemed to slip